So despite being 19 games above 500, being the 4th seed in a stacked Western Conference, and having the 6th best record in the league, the Utah Jazz have not been talked about at all. They're talked about so little that you would have thought they're one of the worst teams in the league, but they're actually one of the best in the league. If we're being honest, they might be the most underrated team in the league right now. That has led me to make this video where I'll be discussing whether or not I think the Utah Jazz will go far in this year's playoffs and try and redeem themselves from previous years. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to go over 3,000 subscribers, also drop a comment on this video because I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. The Jazz are ever going to go far in the playoffs, I guarantee you it will be off of the back of their offense. Over the last few years, the Jazz have always been one of the better offenses in the league due to the fact that they have so much players who could drive and kick, so much players who could play in the pick and roll, so much players who are fantastic three-point shooters and guys who can hit difficult threes, and then they have Rudy Gobert in the paint as a lob target. So much playmakers on this team, but that's not exactly what makes them hard to guard. They have a lot of really good offensive players. They have Donovan Mitchell, who I still think is one of the most underrated and somewhat forgotten stars in the league. I swear no one talks about him until it's playoff time, but he's averaging 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists on good efficiency. Arguably having his best season, but I think last year was a little bit better. But in my opinion, Donovan Mitchell, at least in the playoffs, is a superstar. But we all know how good Donovan Mitchell is. Not too much to say about him. He's playing at his great level. The Jazz really have some good role players around him. They have Bogdanovic, low-key having the best year of his career. Definitely an underrated player. He's been giving them 18 points, shooting nearly 40% from 3. I'm not calling him an all-star or anything, but he's definitely a great starter, one of the better supporting players in the league. He's playing way better than he did last season. They still have Mike Conley, who's the underrated point guard in the league. He's not as good as he was last year. He's still pretty good, an elite three-point shooter, a solid passer, guy who can go up for big games. We saw that last year in the playoffs. Then they have guys like Hassan Whiteside, who has been a solid backup big man, one of the better backup bigs in the league. Daniel House has been a solid addition as well. Let me not forget to mention Jordan Clarkson, who we all know is one of the best bench players in the league, the reigning 6th man of the year. He's definitely going to be a huge help to them because he's a guy who can create his own shot, and we saw in the playoffs that guy had a lot of really big games for them, and on certain nights in the playoffs he was their best offensive player. They're going to need him to really step up and be that second scorer alongside Mitchell, because if I'm being honest, I don't think Mike Conley will be capable of doing that at this stage in his career, like being the second best scorer on a team that's trying to make it to the finals. And Bogdanovic is nice, and he is capable of scoring over 20 points, but the way Jordan Clarkson can just go off is something that the Utah Jazz definitely will need. And let me not forget that they have Rudy Gobert, who is a guy who's kind of limited on offense. You're not going to throw him in the post and make him attack other centers in the post or something, but he's one of the best live catchers in the league and one of the best putback players in the league. Still averaging 15 points, so it's not like he's a trash offense player and stuff like that. But straight up, this team overall on the offensive side of the floor can outshoot anyone in the Western Conference, for being honest. The only question I have about their offense is if they're not hitting their threes, will they still be able to score well? Because a lot of their players aren't great when it comes to finishing at the rim. They're mainly just spot-up shooters. And if they're not able to hit their shots, that makes life way harder for Donovan Mitchell, because that's going to force him to get way more double teamed and just make it way harder for him to attack the basket. Because last year in the playoffs, we saw when they were not hitting their threes, they were pretty easy to stop on offense, because teams were just double teaming Donovan Mitchell, forcing other players to try and create plays, which they can do, but a lot of their players were just choking and underperforming, not hitting shots, turning the ball over. But if they're hitting their shots, there's not much the defense can do. The only teams that I think can beat them in the West is a fully healthy Golden State squad and a Phoenix Suns squad. The Memphis Grizzlies definitely are capable of taking them down, the Denver Nuggets or the Dallas Mavericks, but genuinely in a series, actually no, I think I would have the Grizzlies over them. But I think it would be a close series. Next, we have to talk about the Utah Jazz's questionable defense. I'm aware that the Jazz are top 10 in the league in defensive rating, but basically every year they're one of the best defenses in the league. But when it comes to the playoffs, their defensive game plan always crumbles. A lot of the time, people like to blame Rudy Gobert. Honestly, I don't even think it's Rudy Gobert's fault, because it's not like he turns into a bad rim protector in the playoffs, because that's what he is. He's still one of the best rim protectors in the playoffs, but the defense just forces him to guard the perimeter because like the offense just goes super small or something like that. And obviously that's not a strong suit. And honestly, I think the bigger problem is the Utah Jazz's perimeter defenders, because at times their perimeter defense is just absolutely terrible. And that leads to Rudy Gobert having to just save the whole defense, which he's capable of doing, hence their top 10 defense in the league. But in the playoffs, unless their opponents are just flat out not a good three-point shooting team, that plan is not going to work, because you're just going to be giving up a bunch of wide open threes. They could just go 5 out. That forces Rudy Gobert to guard the perimeter. So honestly, I think the Jazz perimeter defenders just have to be better and not as reliant on Rudy Gobert. But overall, just having Rudy Gobert on defense makes you a good defense. But if the Jazz want to go deep, I promise you their perimeter defense has to be better. We even saw Rudy Gobert saying to like reporters and stuff earlier this year that the Jazz defense as a whole hasn't been as good as previous, and that they just have to be better and give more effort on the perimeter, which isn't a lie. If I'm being honest, my biggest concern with the Jazz is the fact that their defense is always sketchy in the playoffs. Maybe this season will be different, although I don't really think so, because it's not like they added a bunch of new great defenders, and they still don't have like one elite perimeter defender. Sure, Royce O'Neal is really good and underrated on defense, but outside of him, everyone else is average to below average. But to answer the question of how far I think the Jazz will go in this year's playoffs, honestly, I can see the Jazz surprising everyone, making it all the way to the conference finals, maybe even the finals if injuries go in their favor. They have a chance to, but there's still a lot of questions about this team that haven't really been answered, because it's not like they added a bunch of great defenders to help Rudy Gobert in the playoffs. Yes, their offense is really good, but outside of Donovan Mitchell, they don't really have another all-star level player on offense. To be honest, for me to be fully confident in the Jazz, they would have to get a secondary all-star level guy or just get way better perimeter defenders. But regardless, the Jazz are a team that is capable of going far in the first round, and if they're going to go far, it's going to be kind of reminiscent to the 2011 Dallas Mavericks run or the 2020 Miami Heat runs. They're definitely going to be a dark horse contender right now, and to be honest, I expect them to get knocked out in the second round by Golden State or Phoenix. But to be honest, I wouldn't mind seeing them go further, because for some reason, it might be because of Donovan Mitchell, but the Jazz are actually one of my favorite teams in the league. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you think the Utah Jazz are going to go far this year. Drop a like on this video, on my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to go over 3,000 subscribers, also drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro.